We're not doing an intro? No intro? Yeah, we're live. You're not even ready.
Yeah, we're not ready. We're ready, but we're not. What up?
You don't even got no intro. We just had a countdown. I was like, all right, I'll just go with that.
Did we not do the intro?
No, you didn't. You just did the countdown. And then just we starting sloppy today. That's what we're doing. We're
It's not even
starting sloppy.
sloppy. It's not even sloppy. It's just regular uncanny.
Slippity slop.
I mean, we all can't be the hitman and the big guy. You know,
Pump on my volume a little bit.
pump up the volume, pump up the volume, pump up
Thank
the
you,
volume.
James. I appreciate that. I'm gonna put that right up there.
Oh yeah, look at that. Look at you. Look at you
Did.
getting all praises.
It was a good show for being based on kind of like a joke thing, but it wasn't too bad. A lot of good discussion. All kinds of good discussion. We're just gonna sit there the whole show, just like,
Yeah.
yep.
Like
That's
I
the
said, we
show
can't.
right there.
So here's some good news for everybody. Tomorrow I'll be at the Butler Paranormal Conference in Lindor, PA. So feel free to come out, say what's up, say hi. Shake my hand. I'll shake your hand. We can shake each other's
Just walk
hands.
up and slap his face and then walk away. And then he'd be like, I think that was James Boggs. Why did he do that?
Then I gotta slap you for getting slapped because it's uncanny slap hour.
Uh, Boo this man. Boo.
Boo, boo, boo. Who is it? Boo earns or boo?
I don't know. I was going to say something derogatory, but it's not that kind of show.
Not yet. Give it time. The way it's devolved already. So with the hitman and the big guy, the sniper and the large fellow. What's going on in your world, though?
Not too much. Got good stuff going on. Still have, for some reason, last Thursday, I must not have set the time right for my last Spirits Club because it debuted at midnight on Thursday morning.
Somebody
It's
was a
just like I
little
saw it was
drunk
live and I
behind
was
the
just like,
wheel.
I'm not live, but there it was. So if you didn't notice and you were wondering why it wasn't at 9:30, that's because it was several hours earlier, and you can go back and watch that.
Somebody was a little drunk behind the wheel.
I don't think so. I don't think that episode was a particularly hefty episode, but who knows? I don't go back and watch them over after I'm done. I just do them and just hope for the best.
Did. Right. So
Real life, Big Brother, MTV,
I never watched that show. So
the
I don't
real
know what it is.
world.
The only time I ever watched that episode was with the dude that had AIDS and Puck.
I have no idea. My sisters used to watch it sometimes back in the day.
Puck. I just
Uh,
remember Puck because I would watch UMTV Raps, and
mm,
sometimes they'd have UMTV Raps either on before or after. So I'd have to check it out.
mm.
That was back in the day. They had like Wu-Tang Clan and Bone and all them jazz guys.
Yeah, that was right before it stopped showing videos at all, and it was only showing reality shows. And
Like
then
Jersey
M2 was
Shore.
showing videos, and then they started doing reality shows.
Yeah, it was like VH1, and then VH1 stopped, and then they were reality shows. But now there's YouTube, so you can watch all the music videos you want, all the classics. So
yeah, if you wanted to.
sometimes I feel like watching old videos, and that's not often. Like sometimes I might want to watch Cypress Hill's "Insane in the Brain" because that was a really popular video when I was young, in my day of music. Cypress Hill's that, and there was a couple others. But Cypress Hill was like real big. Everybody was like, yeah, that Insane in the Brain song. It's great. So, anyways, people out there in beautiful high definition 720 because we can't afford the 1080p package. So, unless you
Not
donate to
yet.
the Patreon.
Not yet.
What do you got going on tomorrow?
Tomorrow is a long-awaited or long-dreaded, depending on which side of the argument you're on, episode that I'm doing for the Spiritualist, which is I'm finally going to dip the toes into Left-Hand Path, which some folks are interested in and some people are wary of, and there is a lot of misconception about it, and there is a little bit of hypocrisy involved, not on my part, but on the part of some major practitioners. So I'm going to have to address all of that, and yeah, it should be a pretty good episode. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to sift through, and I think we'll have a good time. I think we'll learn a lot.
Excellent. And then what do you got coming up on Monday?
I don't know yet. It's usually always kind of up in the air. If anybody caught the episode of the podcast for last Monday, I told a series of funny stories about peacocks.
Was it about peacocks?
Yeah, because my dad owned peacocks and they would wander around the property and they would make this obnoxious noise.
You said he used to climb on the roof and you'd have to go
Yeah.
get him?
Yeah, I'd have to bring them down because they only fly for short distances, and that's enough to roost in trees that are not on our property, but on neighbor's property, or on top of my parents' 3-story house plus attic. So, it was very high up in the air. I needed the gigantic, like firefighter-sized ladder to get up there to tell them to come down.
Huh. All right. Well, shall we get started with our proverbial amazement that we like to call dad jokes?
It's time for dad jokes.
Yes, brought to you by a grill at a park.
Where you would go with your family.
Yes. And here we go. What do you use to heal cuts in the Matrix? What do you use to heal cuts in the Matrix? Neosporin. Neosporin. That's what you use.
That's a real kind of niche joke right there.
Well, I figured based on
Yeah.
what we're talking about tonight, I figured it hit home where it needed to hit.
Not in the best of ways.
Maybe in the best of ways, but maybe in the worst of ways too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're definitely on the road to a heart attack for Spider. So
no, that one was so on the side, kind of niche. Like I don't even like those movies. So
the first one was good.
No, it wasn't.
Here we go. One of them.
We're always going to disagree on that. It wasn't.
One of them.
It wasn't good.
He's one of them. I don't like it because I'm
just edgy. Like the first Space Jam wasn't really all that good either, but people just have this nostalgia for it. It wasn't that good.
Those are two completely different types.
I know, but people have the same kind of opinions. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is such a great movie." No, it's not. No.
This guy, he's one of those. He probably likes like some stupid indie film that doesn't make any sense.
What, like a Darren Aronofsky film?
Yeah, that's probably your favorite choice.
Every single film he's made is fantastic. No, not
can't
really.
wait to go home and watch Requiem for a Dream.
I've seen most of his films too, and I don't know.
I guess Mother's a disturbing one.
No, I've heard it's terrible.
It's weird.
Like it had an interesting concept, but
anything that dude does is depressing. The only one I've never seen of his is Pi, or whatever that was called.
The first one, yeah, that's in black and white. I rented it from the Akron Library.
I rented quite a few good movies from there.
Well, not really rented because it's a library, so you don't really rent it. But I borrowed it from the library and then I took it back.
Was it good?
I mean, yeah. I got the concept, but it was really rough and it wasn't like, I don't know. It was pretty poor, but I got the concept. The execution wasn't really there, but
none of his movies really are there. Like Requiem for a Dream was the most depressing movie I've ever seen, I think, in my entire
And
life.
strangely, the most coherent. Like it's the one that made the most sense. All the other ones, they really don't. Like The Fountain is
God,
three different short stories in
listen,
one, and none of them match. Like they don't. It doesn't fit. Like it was all visuals and like I don't know. I
I was
kept looking
either
for a thread to connect the whole
there was
thing, and
not
it never showed up.
that stupid tree. The tree was the only thread that was
That's
connecting.
it. But I mean, they didn't explain like whether this was
No.
his future or his ancestors' future, or if that guy was his past or whatnot. It didn't explain any connection to any parts of it.
Listen, I saw that. I was either driving to or driving back from West Virginia. I wasn't driving, obviously, but my parents were, and I would sit and watch movies. I have one of those power blocks that you plug
Mhm.
into a cigarette lighter or a whatever they call those things now, a car adapter. And then I would watch two movies because it's a 4 hour drive, 5 hour drive. So I just watched two movies. So I think the first movie I watched was Ultimate Warrior with Yul Brynner. It's like an old B sci-fi movie. I usually watch a
Mhm.
lot of those. Then the other was The Fountain, and I'm like, oh sweet, I've been wanting to see this because I thought it would look kind of cool.
Yeah,
Boy, was I duped
it
into
was.
that nonsense.
It did look cool, and that was it.
Yeah, there
Like
was cool parts of it.
it
That
had
tree
good
was awesome
cinematography.
looking.
Like his
Yeah.
cinematography is great. I'll say that he's got that like great. All of his scenes look fantastic, but none of it
What?
made any sense. Like
Listen, I got the only okay. So the only thing I remember was Rachel Weisz was in it. She was in that. She was in the Mummy in this World War II movie that was really good that I forget the name of. But all I remember is the one dude's wife dying. I think that's Hugh Jackman.
yeah,
I
it's Hugh
think Hugh
Jackman.
Jackman's wife was dying, and they were like trying to find a way to cure her, and then the tree. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I'd rather watch that cat for 2.5 hours.
He was doing like experiments on some plant that was from the jungle that was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be like the tree from the beginning because he had the
Well, I think that tree was
conquistadors.
supposed to be the tree of
Yeah,
from Eden.
because it was Tree of Life, and it was the conquistadors were looking for it, Fountain of Youth, and everything, and it was from the Tree of Life. And so then, but they didn't connect like whether any of it was actually related. Like there was no connecting bit to any of it. It was
It didn't
three
make
different
sense.
stories with no resolution to any of them.
It made this amount of sense. Zero. That's how much sense the whole
Mhm.
movie made. And I mean, like, speaking of realities, it was three different realities tucked into one.
Yeah, if they
Doesn't
had
make sense.
something to tie them together, it'd be fine. But it didn't. Like it didn't at any point say like there was no connection between any of it. So it was like three separate mini movies.
No, it
And
was supposed to be the tree. The tree was the connection.
yeah, but
Wasn't a
even
good
then,
one.
like
Wasn't a good
no,
one. I admit that. Wasn't a
they
good
didn't
one.
explain why it was the connection. That's all.
There's only like off the top of my head, there's only like 4 or 5 movies I can say that it was a waste of time watching that I did not want to watch. The first was that one. Second was probably the Michael Myers, the Halloween movie that Rob Zombie directed. I walked out of the theater. It was so stupid. Just dumb. And there's been like a couple others that I just stopped watching. Or I like, but I mean, like I was there for two, like the movie's like an hour and 50. So you're just sitting
Mm.
there watching, you're like, all right. And then there's no payoff.
You keep
It,
waiting for something to like be like, okay, this is it. It's gonna explain everything, and then it doesn't. At the very end, he
and
goes
she
up with the
dies.
the orb and thing. Like he's like this monk, and he's with the tree alone in space, and it goes up, and then it all just disappears, and a thing of light, and it's like,
It's very
what
artsy. If
was
you
the
don't know
point? Like,
art, I just feel like that movie could have been if that had been given in the right hands, I think it would have been a pretty decent film. I know people that love it. They'd be
it
like, "It's
looked
a great
nice.
movie.
It
It
did
looks
look
pretty.
nice.
That's
That's
it."
all. Like,
The
it
tree
did
was
look
amazing. The
fantastic.
tree part was cool, but
That
it was
end
just
bit,
like,
like that whole sequence looked great. Like it was fantastic. I just wish I knew what the whole point of it was.
I said, Requiem for a Dream was depressing. It was just, man, it did not get better at all the entire movie.
The most iconic thing about that one is that music, that kind of thing that, and they
Oh
play
yeah.
that with like modern trailers all the time, and they adapt it and remix it, and it's like you've probably heard it sometime in the last year. You've probably heard it for a movie trailer in the last year, I imagine, somewhere, like because it's always used. They
Leave
even used
me.
it for Lord of the Rings back in the day for those movies. They pumped it up with big, huge like orchestra and everything, and they played a version of it for that. So it's weird how the theme keeps popping up when the movie's like not that grand. It's just kind of like, oh man, it's everybody's devolving into this drug feud.
Yeah, it was weird. Like everybody had a vice because the three mains are on heroin. The mom's on diet pills.
She ends
Pseudo
up in that
snacks.
asylum at the
The
end.
fridge coming at her was hilarious. Like nobody else laughed at that. I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, this is so horrible. So Lee Dickey says, "Hey, what's up, Lee? Welcome, welcome. We are live. So yes, we are Siskel and Ebert tonight. We should just did movie reviews the whole time. Just let it
We
devolve
have
into
opinions
movie.
about that.
We got
We
opinions
got
about
some
some movies.
opinions.
He is not a fan of The Matrix, which is
No.
very weird.
No.
No
I remember
part
the
of it.
first time I watched it too. I remember the first time I watched it.
I bought a DVD player for $400 just for that Matrix.
It was so dumb. Like
It
it
was
was
great.
like this is the summer blockbuster, and that's what it was. It was all
great.
summer blockbuster.
When he finally wakes up and is able to he just says no and the bullets fall. That was dope.
No, it was all dumb.
Now the second, third, yeah, the second was cool with the ghosts. That was a cool little scene. But the whole problem with the second one is that it doesn't phase well into the third, and then the third is just awful. I didn't even see the fourth one, so I don't even know if the
Yeah, I have
fourth
no
one's any
idea.
good.
Yeah, I have no idea.
The third one that was it.
Especially since in the fourth one it's just Keanu Reeves playing Keanu Reeves in a different movie. Because he has that same look now. He's got that long hair and the beard thing, and that's what he looks like in every single movie.
Well, he's John Wick in the main.
In every single movie. That's it. Like the only time he was different was when he shaved for the new Bill and Ted movie, but he still had like everything else is the same.
There you go.
See?
You got somebody that's in common ground with you.
See?
You both don't know movies. That's fine. We all make mistakes. I'm sure you like something awful. You like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, though, and that movie sucks.
Nah, I don't like it. I'll watch it.
You love it. You love it.
No, I'll watch it.
You
It's not my
love Tim
thing,
Curry.
but I'll watch it.
You love Tim
Not every
Curry.
role he does. No, like some of them are better than others.
He was a weasel in The Shadow, which was fantastic. So there's that. This is just evolving into talking about movies now, I think.
Is that our new reality? We're creating a movie reality right now.
So Lee, what's your favorite movie then? Because now I gotta find this out. What's your favorite movie? James, you can answer this question too.
I was just talking about my favorite movie with Deadpool the other day, actually.
What movie was that again?
Unbreakable with Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson.
You know
Best
what?
movie of all time. Best movie.
It's not. I will say this. It's not.
Personal opinion. Personal opinion.
It's not. It's a good movie. Greatest of all time. No, that honor goes to Blade Runner.
It's decent. It's decent. I like it. The second one's decent too.
Second one's good.
I liked the second one.
For a second movie that came out well after the first, which most movies cannot do this, it was a solid movie. It was a really, really solid movie. I stayed up to like 4 a.m. watching. It was like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie too.
Yeah, it was long.
Good.
And it looked great, and it made sense throughout the whole thing. And you keep thinking that he's like the guy's son to the whole thing, but it ends up being that girl locked up in the thing. So that's good twist. Good twist.
And Dune is probably one of my other favorites, the newest one.
I don't know, the original. What about the original?
I've never seen the original, believe it or not.
It's something to see.
I know it has Sting. That's it. That's the only thing I know is it has Sting.
Yeah, it's got one of my favorite movie lines of all time. I will kill him. I
heard it's horrible
with a knife
acting.
with big hair. It is, but that's what's great about it.
But I mean, I think it's one of those movies that, like, if you lived back then, you probably
the monologues, the internal monologues, is really what gets me.
Bless you.
Pardon me. The internal monologues where they're always like thinking things is what really drags the movie down because there's so much of them. It's so much internal monologue and internal dialogue that it just slows everything down to such a snail's pace that the movie has to be so long because it drags because of that.
So we have the Blues Brothers for Lee Dickey's. I've never seen that movie, so
Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi.
And then for James Boggs,
Jim
we got
Belushi.
Pumpkinhead.
Jim Belushi.
Yeah, because he's
Lance Henriksen, right? Lance Henriksen?
I think so, yeah. I've seen that movie a couple times. It's like a generic, it's like a B horror film from like the 90s. It wasn't bad. The first one wasn't bad. I never saw the other 3, 4, 2. So that's not bad though. Like I'll give it to you. Unbreakable was good. I didn't like it at first. First time I saw it, I thought it was horrible. But then I brought it off you and watched it, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty good actually.
Because there's a concept to it that you really get into, and it doesn't go over the top with it. Like it's like it doesn't make it actually super powered. They did kind of tweak that for the next two movies that ended up making it a trilogy.
I
Like
still need to
Split,
watch Glass and Split. I haven't seen
Split
either of
and
those yet.
Glass. Split you can watch separately, and it just has a cameo at the end to tie it in, and then Glass like ties the whole thing. Glass, I don't know. The Glass's ending wasn't the best ending they could have done with it. Like it could have been better. So the best one of the three, I think, is the first one. But Split isn't bad. It's an interesting movie.
I like him. I like James McAvoy. I think he's a pretty solid actor.
Mm.
Um, and oh, there you go. You two should hang out sometime.
It's an excellent film.
There
Like
you
it
go.
puts the whole thing about comic books and everything in perspective.
It was a solid film. Like Bruce Willis drowning in water, like that was his weakness. He couldn't be in water. I thought that
Hmm.
was cool.
Yeah, and it
Um,
made him extra sick and things like that to be caught in the rain and whatnot. He'd get the
yeah.
flu and stuff.
So that was interesting. That was interesting. Um, Solid movie. But M Night Shyamalan, he delivers sometimes, but sometimes that boy does not deliver at all.
What about The Village?
Awful, awful. One of the worst M Night Shyamalan movies I've ever seen. The premise was stupid. I was like, I thought there were these beings that lived
Hmm.
out of the way, and I was like, that's really cool. And then it's just like they live in modern day, and it's the Twilight Zone did that. It's about the where they go into town for the medicine from the pioneer wagon, and it ends up being
Mm.
a village of a normal, like a modern day village, and they go back. It was kind of the same basic premise. I just thought it was stupid. Like I thought the movie itself didn't make any sense. Like
Yeah, it was interesting. Like it wasn't like I don't know. I don't think it was his best, but I don't think it was his worst. Um,
I think his best is probably oh, that's tough because of course everybody's seen Sixth Sense, which is a good movie in its own right. It's a solid film. Um,
Signs.
that's probably my favorite out of all of his movies. I really liked Signs. I saw it in the theater actually. It was really
Signs
good.
is probably the one with this the least twisty.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one that's more like this is beginning to end, stuff happens in the middle, this is
Yeah.
it, this is the movie. Whereas everything else relies a lot on plot twist, except for Unbreakable, I guess, isn't that twisty either.
What was the
It
one
kind of
where?
gets twisty at the end,
What
but
was the one where the air turn where the plants turned on them? Oh, they killed people. The plants. They started changing the oxygen levels, and it was causing people to commit suicide. The whole movie.
that
You
wasn't
know,
the happening, was it?
maybe where everybody was crashing their cars and
Maybe because I didn't see that one. I don't remember what that one's like. There's two plant movies that I've seen that aren't that one where plants get out of control. One of them is an older movie, which is funny. It's called Day of the Triffids, where these
every
big giant like
yeah, everybody's seen that. Those ended up on
yeah.
Star Trek.
And then there was
Probably Little
what's
Shop
it
of Horrors because I've seen that.
no. Oh, The Ruins. The Ruins was terrible.
Why does that sound
Like the book
familiar?
was the worst book I'd ever read. Hands down. It is
Oh,
the absolute worst book I've ever
oh, I'm
read
sorry.
of all time. And it was funny because like it's one of those books that when it came out, it's like all these big celebrities like, oh, the ruins scared me. Like Will Smith is all talking about the ruins is a great book, and all these like supermodels are talking about the ruins, the ruins. So I get this book. I don't usually do that based off of celebrity stuff. But the book was so bad. Oh, it was awful. And it ends up that it's plants. And I get it. And then the end, everybody gets wiped out, and then like they don't warn anybody. So at the end, it's like, oh, here's a whole car and other people full of load of people coming up, and it's gonna be a whole other thing all over again. La da 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 da. And it's kind of like, oh, it was such a terrible, terrible, terrible book. And there's like an adult section in there that I can't talk about because our show's not an adult show like that. That it's so stupid. Like, why? There was no point.
Speaking of depressing movies, On the Beach, man, On the Beach.
Man, the book
The book.
is the
The
saddest
book.
book I've ever read. Go from the worst
Oh
book I've ever read to
man.
the saddest book I've ever read. And the movie has Gregory Peck. So you think,
Yeah.
oh man, it's a legendary, great actors, man, it's just as bad. Like
Yeah,
the
it's not
movie is
bad
black and
like
white and
it's not bad like it's terrible. It's just
no,
depressing. It's a
it's a
depressing
great
movie.
story. It's
Story's
excellent.
fantastic.
It's just, oh man, it's sad.
The end, because like it's it.
Yeah.
Like there's no hope. There's no
Nobody
hope.
makes it out alive, and
Nobody
it's not
makes
a
it alive.
monster.
Because it just
It's
keeps
not like a foreign nation. It's not a
no.
battle. It's not a fight. It's the slow
Yeah.
come down of the radiation.
Yep.
That's it.
And
There's
they
nothing
keep
you can
trying to
do
get
about it.
further and further away from it, but they can't. They can't
Yeah,
escape it. It's gonna come for them at some point. And they're in a submarine, aren't they?
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
only going to be able to keep things out and keep the pressure out for so long
Yeah.
because you have to surface occasionally to get fresh air and to get
Yep.
food and whatnot. And it's just an inevitability. And that's the whole thing. It's like the whole book is beginning to end,
Yeah.
the inevitable end.
You
And
let me
it's like,
borrow it.
I know, and I warned you. I was like, this is a sad, sad book.
And man, was he not wrong, because
Oh boy.
it didn't get better.
No,
It
no.
did not get better. It got worse.
They were supplying people with the serum to just be like, okay, if you want to be done now, here you go.
Yeah.
Get it done ahead of time. It
Oh.
was all state sanctioned and everything, and it's like,
Because it's nuclear war fallout.
yeah, you can't stop it. You can't do anything about it. It's just
No. And it's crazy to me because like it's a old black and white film, so it's not heavily CGI'd. It's not,
nope.
but the acting is so good that you're just like, damn, because nobody makes it. Nobody makes it.
Nope.
Not one person.
Because
Oh,
sometimes they'll adapt from books and they'll be like, oh yeah, especially back then they were like, oh yeah,
yeah.
we're gonna have a happy ending,
Yeah,
but
you
they didn't.
couldn't.
They didn't. They kept it close, kind of to the book, and it was like, okay,
Between that, like, what was the I Am Legend was a good book. If you ever got a chance to read it, it was a solid book. I've seen all 3 movies, which would be there was one with Vincent Price,
yeah,
which was I think the
Last Man on Earth.
Last Man on Earth, which was really good. The inner monologue of Vincent Price in
Mm.
that movie is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal actor anyway. So,
Mm.
then the Omega Man with Charlton
Yep.
Heston, which I really liked, and then I Am Legend. Out of the 3, I think each one has a good quality and a bad quality. Yo, Zachariah Tachariah from the Black Pack of Riot. What's up, buddy? What's going on? There you go. There it is. James says, I don't really watch many movies. Don't even own a TV. He reminds me of that grandpa from the Lost Boys. You ever see the Lost Boys?
Mm.
And they got a TV guide. He's like, oh,
Yep.
cool. You guys got a TV? And the grandpa goes, nope. He goes, I just like to read it. Too many damn vampires. There it is. There it is. That's one of my favorite all-time movies too. Is the Lost Boys. They made a second one, but we don't talk about that. We don't.
Nah,
Yeah.
it didn't even have Kiefer Sutherland in it.
It didn't.
Like, no, I don't think so. I think
No, I
he
don't
was
think
only
it
in the
did.
first one.
The Frog Brothers. The dude, Death by Stereo. But yeah, I like those. Those are good films. So I guess this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about movies, I guess, and books because we're already half hour in. So I did see this. Oh man, that Super Mario Brothers movie was amazing. It was so good. There was nothing of what's going on in today's day and age. I won't get into specifics. It was just a really fun movie. It was a fun movie. You've seen it yet?
No. I'm kind of like, I don't watch, like James, I really don't watch movies too much these days anymore. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of upset with most modern movies because the pacing is really bad these days for most movies. Not all movies, but most movies, because they have to cater to that short attention span.
Yeah.
So you show up And even if it's a long, like 2 hour movie, 2 hour plus, they have to cram so much stuff in there to keep your
Listen,
attention. I can't. Like it's just if it's not too fast, it's too slow or something. Like
right.
there's no good pacing anymore. There's no plot set up that makes sense. It's just boom, 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 smack in the face, movie's over.
I've been wanting to watch Creed 3 because I've been seeing like bits and pieces of it. So I watched it today, and man, the pacing was awful. Like there was literally no, you didn't get to know the villain very well, but it was like Creed 3 is basically the Mr. T version um of the Rocky movie, because Creed's based off the Rocky films.
Mm.
And I got 2 on, like right there. I'm not watching it, but like I have it on, I'm watching when I get off the show. And it's the same thing. I'm like, man, y'all pacing is terrible. You're not telling a story, you're just rushing it along. And it is weird to me. Like it's so different. Like I said, the last really good movie I liked was Dune. That was a good one. The last movie I saw that was old though, which is hilarious, which I didn't really care for, but it had Sam Neill in it from Jurassic Park fame. In the Mouth of Madness, because I've been looking for a good Lovecraft film, but there isn't any. They don't exist.
They can't ever seem to get it right. Like they it's always off.
And this one was like one of those weird, like I think it was like early to mid '90s horror films, and the early to mid '90s are such a weird
Well, you're coming off of like
time.
the 80s where pretty much anything goes.
Right.
Like even kids movies have like a gratuitous amount of like blood and like drinking and smoking and sometimes nudity in a kids movie. And in the 90s they're like, oh, okay, we're to fix all that, but they focused on like action and this and that. There wasn't too much thrillers in the 90s. It was mostly like action, like big action stuff. And it it was a weird time for movies, but there's some good movies in there. You got to sift through it. I think the late 80s had great movies. Early to mid 90s were really kind of like because they didn't know where to go with movies
Hit
anymore
or
because they
miss.
were trying to decide how to be censored and how not.
Hit or
And
miss.
then the 2000s started to pick up with really good movies again. And then now we're in kind of a slow part where it's kind of like sometimes you get a good movie and most of them are just garbage.
Like the superhero movies of the 2000s are awful. The only one I still the 90s weren't that great either, but they had the first Blade, which I really enjoyed. That's one of my favorite superhero movies. But like I don't like the X-Men movies weren't that great.
Only really the first one. Like the first one was all right. It had potential. It wasn't great, but it had potential. But then they kept like that third one, Last Stand. It was so bad. Like it was just straight up not good. There's no way. It just wasn't good.
And then everybody watched the Harry Potter movies. I think I saw up to like the fourth. Lord of the Rings, I saw the first 2, didn't watch the third.
You got to be into that though. Like that's one of those things where you have to have been really into the books already. Because it's one of those things that if you're not, then the movies are going to be just really dry and drawn out, and there's not going to be much to them.
So the only 3 Sandra Bullock movies I can remember off the top of my head are Serendipity, Speed, and there's one more where she plays an alcoholic. 28 Days. Those movies.
While You Were Sleeping was pretty good for being a romantic comedy. Like her and Bill Pullman, like he's in a coma. And he wakes up and like his family, like she saves him from something and he wakes up and her family like convinces him that she's his fiance or something like that. And she's not. It sounds like it's some sappy, like, oh, kind of movie, but it wasn't that bad, honestly. I was kind of back in those days, I was a Sandra Bullock fan. She doesn't do good movies anymore, though. Not really.
I liked, I'd say I'm not a fan of this person. But Julia Roberts was in a really good movie where she was like dating or living with this guy, and he was like gonna kill her. It was called Sleeping with the Enemy. It was a good it was a thriller. It was a solid thriller. So I don't know why I skipped the first two Lord of the Rings films and saw the last in the theaters. Yeah, you got to be into it. Remember that dude created his own language for that movie. Yeah, like Tolkien literally created his own language for that entire movie, for the entire series.
The books were basically an excuse because he was a language professor. Yep. The books were an excuse for him to show off his language that he had created, which was the Elven language, in a believable setting. he only grew it off of that, and from there, like his family convinced him you should keep on going and you should like make this into something good, and so he ended up making the whole set of books from it, and like the prequel book and things like that. Which the prequel is like one of the driest parts of that. If you thought the regular ones were kind of like okay, the prequel ones are just like
You talking about the Silmarillion? Or the
yeah, it's like
Silmarillion,
when
whatever?
it's like when you get into biblical stuff, but you get into the genealogies.
That's actually fascinating to me now. It didn't used to
But
be, but now it is. But I get it.
but
I get it. Because that's all that
so
is.
and so
The
begat so and so,
Silmarillion, the
so and so
Silmarillion is
begot so and so,
100%
so and so
just
begot so and so, and it's like goes on for pages. The
it's
Silmarillion is kind
100%
of like
like
that,
yeah. It's
but it's fictional.
100% genealogy. Oh yeah, yeah, see. 3.5 hours for Return of the King. Yeah, it's a long one.
And the
And then
extended versions are all like 4 hours long.
I don't have that kind of time to sit and
And
watch a
then
4 hour long movie.
they split the first like The Hobbit. They split it into 3 different movies.
Oh, those were my favorite ones. The Hobbit movies were good.
Well, because they were all action and they all added so much stuff that wasn't in the book because they
Yes.
put it into 3 movies. Like it was one book and they made it 3 movies, whereas the other ones were 3 books and 3 movies. So they had to pump it so full of so much more action to make
That
people watch it.
that'd have been 9 movies if they'd have done the same thing with the 3 books.
Ugh. That's like Star Wars right there. And Star Wars
Oh.
doesn't need that many movies.
I didn't watch
It
the last
doesn't.
3 stuff. Well, I saw The Force Awakens, and then it was just a retelling of Star
As
Wars
a kid,
1.
I was a huge Star Wars fan. I had
Same.
books and figures and
Same.
everything. And then the newest movies, just out of all of the modern movies, the only one I like is Rogue One because of the tone.
Rogue
It's
One's
serious, it's
fantastic.
dark,
Rogue was
and the
fantastic.
reason being is because it's directed by that guy who did the first modern retelling of Godzilla.
Gareth Edwards.
And
He
he's the
also
guy who
did
did that
Monster.
other
Yeah,
he
that
did
was
that independent
good.
film Monsters, and he's got
That
a
was good.
great he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
they should have just kept him on for everything. Like make a whole Star Wars trilogy with that guy, I'm on it.
Listen, that first Godzilla like retelling in 2014, I saw that in the
Yes.
theater.
Oh
Oh,
man,
so
yeah.
good. There's a
Yep.
part where like everything's dark and you just see the lightning from the clouds and you see the silhouette. Oh.
And people complained because there was so little like actual like footage of the monsters fighting. They kept it like mostly down on the human level, but it was done so well.
It was great.
Oh man.
It was great, and it was because it was told from the human perspective. It wasn't told from the Godzilla. People wanted Japanese Godzilla. They wanted
Tojo stuff.
Tojo. Yeah, is it? No, it wasn't Tojo. It was Toho.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yep.
Toho
You're right.
stuff. So
You're right.
which I have. I have all the Toho movies, all of them. And the 2014 movie is the best one I've ever seen. Just to be serious. That's about right. That's about
We'll pop
right.
that up because that's a good comment.
So, but I mean, the thing about everything is those movies, they create their own reality. Segue. See, I did that.
Hey, in the last 20 minutes of the show, we're gonna fit it in there somehow. Just shoehorn it in. Just tap it in.
No, but I thought that was interesting, like how in in Star Wars and in the Matrix they were able to sort of create the reality around them, and I thought that was kind of an interesting. That's why I like the Matrix. Yes, it's 100% like the acting isn't great. I wasn't rushing out to be like this is Oscar worthy, but it was a good science fiction story about just like being able to, The only thing I did not like about the Matrix is how everybody took that idea and then it just became its own thing, and it was just
like it's a big thing among conspiracy theorists about living in the Matrix and being this. And we've talked about a simulation and things like that, but this is different. This is more like, oh, we're all plugged into this and whatnot. And I mean, we both knew someone personally who was about that idea, and she ended up being a bit on the crazy side, like from Scandinavian regions.
Oh,
I don't want to like put anybody on the spot, and I don't want to name
I don't
any
want to give
names.
anybody free promotion either.
No, but it just it was a constant like I'm plugged into the Matrix and people do this and they do this and it messes with me. I'm like, no,
Neighbors
I don't
burnt their
think
food
so.
again. All they do is burn their food.
I mean, I tried to be sympathetic, but sometimes with people, you can't. Like, you do your best, but people are so into that idea, and it's taken hold. It's a pop culture thing now that's seeped into the brain. It's like we're all stuck in the Matrix. We have to wake up, and that leads to the woke thing and anti-woke and this and that, and then you get into a whole spiral of just should have stayed home today.
I should
That's
have
what it
stayed
is.
home.
Should have stayed home today.
I should just went to the Winchester till all this blows over. That's what I
Yeah.
should have done. 1000%. So, but I like the premise of being able to kind of physically shape your own reality, which proof we are in the Matrix. Everything used Dragula in its soundtrack for like 10 years there. Yeah. That was a big thing.
Or it was just a really popular song.
I never liked that song. Ever. But I don't like Rob Zombie. So there you go. He's not a good director. He's not a good musician. Sorry.
I'm a fan of music, but
okay. You didn't say you're a fan of that. You're just like, I'm a fan of music.
I have everything he's put out. I have like everything all the way back to like 1987. That stuff's rough. That stuff's like early like club stuff. Super early.
Listen. Him?
I do try to see other points of view. I always do.
Here we go.
I do.
Here we go.
I try.
Go. You don't know him. You don't. Yeah, right. This is.
See,
right.
I'm the villain. I'm the super villain because the super villain has a goal that's intended to be good, but it's at the expense of everything else. Like,
true.
That's how it is. Like the super villain will do what needs to be done regardless of how you like it or not, and that's why he's a villain. Because ends justify the means, but
yeah. Whatever.
Anyway.
All right. Okay.
I'll just fire myself.
Calm down, Dr. Doom.
I'll just fire myself.
Out of a cannon.
I haven't been fired for a while, so you might as well.
Nah. If I go down, you're going down with me. Power Man.
Power Man's good too, yeah. Power Man 5000. Coincidentally, Rob Zombie's brother.
Oh, so even more trash music. Fantastic.
I saw them in Geneva, Ohio, on Geneva on the Lake, in a tiny club called The Cove, with Head P.
They're all right.
And who else? I think Cottonmouth Kings, of all people. Like, it was a weird bill. Like, it didn't make any sense, but I saw him.
All right.
His name is Spider-One. Yep. That's the lead singer of Power Man 5000. That's what he calls himself.
Is that like Rogue One?
Maybe. Which is the best of those movies, so.
Anyways, so my presentation from the Fayette County Bigfoot Symposium is on my Facebook, so please go watch it ASAP.
I know people were asking about it in the last Friday's show. People were asking to see if you had any video. So there you go. There's your chance.
I got to get the copy so I can upload it to the YouTube.
That's courtesy of Mr. Ryan O'Shea, by the way.
Yes.
So some props and shout outs to him. I don't know if he's watching, but if you are, kudos to you.
Thank you. Yes. Did a good job capturing my good side.
I didn't know you had one of those. I thought it was all just kind of like every side.
I don't know what that is, but sure.
At least you don't look like it's game over, man. You're past that point. Everything's growing differently. I say this.
So this is just going to be the show that I'm
looking ridiculous.
This is just my show now. I don't know what he thinks. Nope, we're not doing that. No.
Shenanigans.
Whoever tuned into this.
Shenanigans.
Like, I think James might have left, which I don't blame him.
Shenanigans.
Um, so yes, I do think that we do create our own reality in a sense. But when we get into like tulpas and we start getting into things like that, I think the interesting key aspect of all that is your brain's a pretty powerful weapon,
Hmm.
or however you want to do it. But yeah, make believe friends, things like that are very fascinating to me. And some people just seem to fall into money. Like some people just seem to have knacks and talents. And yes, it's hard work, but I also think it's your mindset. I think it's how
Hmm.
you view things. You know, if you get up in the morning and say, "Well, I'm gonna have a bad day," you're predestining yourself to have a bad day.
Yeah.
You're exposing yourself to that bad day. But if you get up and say, "I'm gonna have a good day," even if you have a bad day, you still got a good mentality for that day. But I think it steps beyond that. I think that we're just trapped in the matrix, man, and I got to pull the plug out. Um, but I think that we can create our own realities. I think that that's talked about in many different religious beliefs, such as Christianity's one, Islam's another, Gnosticism is another. Though Gnosticism can be a bit dreary because you're trying to escape your mortal shell because your mortal shell is corrupt. So the whole idea behind that is you're just trying to escape. Um, but I think that we can, in essence, create our own reality and create. But the one thing I kind of wonder sometimes is, do we create the beings in our reality? Is the spider only exist because he's a figment of my imagination, or do I exist because I'm a figment of his imagination?
And that's a really interesting point because we can only rely on what we believe as real based on what our senses show us. And we know based on different illnesses and mental problems or whatever, sometimes our senses can lie to us.
Yeah.
Even just straight physical stuff, like even, and I'm going to mention this and not in a very like hot button kind of way, but just as a symptom. The virus from the last few years, one of the big symptoms was you lose your sense of taste and smell for a little while, right? That's something relatively mundane as far as they go. We have a lot of
Right.
mental things that can change that around. We have synesthesia, which means you can taste colors and see smells and hear whatever. You're not really, but it's how your brain is interpreting those signals. And
Right.
so, how do you know that any of this is really real around you? And it's funny because I wrote when I was in high school, I was a goofball and I hated school. And I was just trying to get out of school as
So
quick as I
what
could.
changed?
I know. And we had to do a class project, which we were like the test bed for class projects. You didn't have to
Nice.
do anything really ridiculous. But the thing I did was a term paper. And part of my term paper was proving that everything, yeah, allegory of the cave is a great point to that
Yeah.
actually. Part of my term paper was explaining that no one else in the classroom was real. It was all just a projection of my mind. And I had a bunch of points that backed it up because that's again, it's all what our senses see. It's all what our
Right.
minds can see. And if you don't believe things well enough, you could actually block complete sections of your life completely.
100%. And people have
And
done that. Like
yeah,
trauma,
there's
people go through bad trauma and they'll completely
yeah,
block it out.
mhm.
And like it really doesn't come to light until you get into like hypnotic regression or one little
Firewalkers,
thing. Yeah.
like
Like,
firewalking, you basically block out the pain
yeah.
receptors. It's not like your
Well,
body isn't being hurt, but
there's two thoughts about that though. Because firewalkers, if you ever notice, nobody ever walks the fire alone. There's always a group of people supporting them, right?
mhm,
So you have to
mhm.
wonder if that support system, these people that believe in you, wholeheartedly believe in you. That's why
That's the same thing.
if you ever go to a sports game, right, and you have the rowdy fans,
Mm.
like they're just, and the team wins, a lot of times that's home field advantage. There's a reason they call it home field advantage.
And we
Same
talk
basic
about that.
concept.
We've talked about quote unquote power of prayer,
Yeah.
which is
Oh,
less
yeah.
power of prayer necessarily. Again, not to insult anybody or to be like, because I know people believe certain things, and that's fine. That's great. It's more the power of collective willpower because
Right.
that's energy from so many minds focusing on something specific happening or not happening. We
Right.
know it
Right.
works. We know it works.
And I think that's the beauty of everything too, is that everything is tied in together. So when you have 12, 15 people around you saying, yeah, you could do it, you can walk on these coals, and then they do it,
Mm.
That I think is that there's something to that. There's like a shaping of your reality to where you believe in yourself. And if you have that doubt, you have those people to back you up to put that doubt to rest. And they're using their power to manifest a reality for your feet so you don't get burned.
And that's interesting compared to, say, the snake dancing thing that certain like Christian off to the side kind of like backwoods kind of sects use, because they do the snake biting thing
Yeah.
and sometimes they survive, but sometimes they don't, which tells you that the people around them watching them do it may not believe they're going to live through it.
Yeah. Or they may
And
not like the person.
that's
They might want them to die.
yeah, that's a test of either the faith or the snake handlers. That's what it
Yeah.
is. And that puts things into perspective as well.
And I've done or I've done a lot of research into the snake handlers in the Appalachian area. And they pull like a lot of like your more specific groups pull exactly from certain verses of the Bible.
Mm.
They don't look at it as a whole. They look at it from one perspective. So they say, okay, like no weapon forged by man can hurt me. So like they take turns stabbing each other with swords or something like that. It's that basic concept.
Yeah.
It's a lot deeper than that, but they take that one verse and they make a whole belief system that's centered around the idea that, okay, I'll get bit by a snake, right? And we'll be fine. And sometimes they do live. Sometimes they do live, and they don't have any anti-venom there. So because the snakes there, I think in that region, I don't think they're poisonous enough to where the anti-venom doesn't work. Because I know there's snakes that if you get bit by them, you're basically screwed. You're dead. I think if you get anti-venom with these, you're fine. But not the point. They don't have anti-venom. So if you get bit, it's like no, they do have copperheads, but I think I think you can, if you get bit by a copperhead, I think you can actually still live. Like if you get proper treatment, I think you can still live from that. I don't think that you're going to die if you get the anti-venom. However, like I said, they don't have it. So to them, they look at it like, you know what? We can do this because God strengthened us. Well, like we said, there are people who have been bitten and live from it. It's definitely different. It's definitely odd. And then there's people that don't. And like I said, I've been to you guys probably don't know this, but you will. They're in the Stanley Church, right? And I've seen people go into these weird trances, man. This is the weirdest thing, where they're speaking in tongues, but it's a whole trance. Like they're really in a trance. They have put themselves in that situation of where they've created that kind of idea and concept. Once again, they've taken a whole idea, and this is a lot of the apostolic faith. They do this in the apostolic stuff, where they get very speaking in tongues, and they've done it based on a whole like chapter in Acts. They wrap the whole belief system around that one chapter and go off of that. And that's what a lot of denominations do. So they create their reality of what they believe from that text based off one singular passage, one singular book, and we have that a lot with different religions. That's why you have so many sects of things and different denominations, because everybody's trying to create their own reality. But I think too, the reason why it's hard to manifest your own reality is probably the electromagnetic interference, because we have a lot of it. We have a lot of wireless technology, interferes with the brainwave patterns. That's just what I think, whether that's true or not. But I remember for a long time, people were going crazy over what was it, 5G.
Yeah.
And
now you don't hear anything about it really. Like people, there's supposed to be videos about people destroying towers and things like that, and like it. I don't know. My tablet here, if I turn off the Wi-Fi, it'll use 5G, and it hasn't murdered me yet. Or mutated me in any sort of weird ways that's noticeable, I guess. I mean, I still talk funny because that's just.
I mean, you've talked funny before 5G.
I know. So, I don't really see, and I never really believed the 5G thing was all that bad. I think there are limits to the frequencies we can use because we
100%.
all know
Well,
EMF.
sound waves actually do interact with
Yeah,
our body and cellular
yeah, we
structure,
know EMFs and
DNA.
things at certain
Yes,
levels will interfere with it, will cause our mood change, it'll cause us
yes,
discomfort and things. So that's a true fact.
yes.
But as far as 5G being used to mind control people and I
Did
don't
you
know.
did you hear about the turning on of 5G and the virus, and it was supposed to like wipe out half the
Yeah, it
population?
was supposed to be connected with coronavirus, and I was just kind of like, "Are you serious? Really?"
Like, I'm
Like,
sorry, like if you believe that, that's fine. Like, but I need to see empirical studies that the two correlate. I need to see the breakdown of the 5G. I need to see the breakdown of the virus. What does the virus do? Have they had the virus in labs with sound? Have they used sound with it or against it? What does it do to the virus? What does it do to the person in the virus? Everybody's physiology is a little bit different. So,
hmm,
what does it do to this person that doesn't do to this person? Like I said, I need to see empirical studies based off of what I see around me. That's not to say I don't have faith or lack faith, but I think
hmm.
there's some things in that regard. If you're going to make an outrageous claim where you're like, yeah, the 5G towers are killing the vaccinated and the coronas and all that, and I'm like, listen, I don't believe that. What how I feel about the virus and the things that happened, that's personal. I'm not going to get into it here. I'm not
Hmm.
going to make it a big X
Yeah, we
show.
try to avoid that kind of stuff.
But I think there's a limit to the conspiracy theories that people create in their own brain. Like it's a reality in their own brain. And you're right.
Hmm.
We are blasted with RF nonstop from space. You know, like, and that's the thing. It's if we really like the solar flares and things like that have bombarded us are far worse than cell phones. You know,
Because the atmosphere doesn't block every single bit of it. Some of it gets through, and we're even affected. We're affected by lunar cycles. It's not
we are.
just like made up. It's not just like, oh, the lunar cycles, it's all witchcraft. It's not. It's like
It's not.
you feel
Or
the
tidal
difference in
locks.
gravity,
Yeah.
you feel the different tidal forces. It's just how it is. And people get crazy on a full moon because they actually do. It's not just like a myth.
Oh, the belief is the treatment puts nanoparticles into you that 5G affects. Okay. I was trying to figure out where I heard that from. You get more
Mm,
harm from radiation from taking a flight. You get more harm from radiation by getting an X-ray. You know, and I agree with you. There's a lot of weird stuff going on out there, but
yeah.
I
And we can't
think,
explain everything.
and I think what happens is like the different government agencies, the letter agencies. I think they put these conspiracies out there so that they can do under the table stuff. I think in the news. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but some very interesting things have happened. China is recalling all of its debts from all the countries that owe them money. So those countries are having like straight like economic collapses because they can't afford manufacturing. Um, Also, they're trying to devalue the dollar, and there's 10 Asian countries at present that are going to phase out the U.S. dollar. You can't spend it there. So that's interesting. That's an
Mm.
interesting take on things, and it's like it's a whole bunch of countries like Southeast Asia, China, the Middle East. They're really trying to band together to do that. Now, I don't think it'll work like they think it will.
The dollar is still, right now, still, it's close, but it's still the strongest currency in the world right now. I mean,
Right.
the things could very well change in an instant, really. But for now, it's still the strongest currency in the world.
And currency's weird like that,
Yeah.
you know.
Economics is a super complicated area. We could do
100%.
like 5 shows and not even scratch the surface.
No, and there's a difference between macro and micro.
Yep.
Micro I
Yep.
was good in, macro I was not. I did not care for
I used to get
macroeconomics.
gold medals in economics in the topic for like academics decathlon and things back in school. We'd go to competitions and do stuff like tests and things about economics. Gold medals. I know what I'm doing.
He'd be supply and demand, the
Yeah.
supply chain, the little graphs.
But when I say that, I know that it's so incredibly complicated. You can't ever just tweak anything and fix it. Like right now, we got the debt thing, we got all
Yeah.
the stuff, we got the inflation going crazy. Like people think maybe you can just fix it with a magic wand, and you cannot. Like what led to this is decades of problems.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's so complicated to unravel, and it's all tied into the whole world now because we're
Yeah.
all part of the world economy with the debt and everything, and we just made it worse, really. But that's something else. That's something else.
Like I said, I find it like I always had to get help because it was hard for me to grasp. Like some of the stuff is like there was like these, what were the imaginary things called? Oh, they were like these imaginary things that they would use. Shoot. It was like units of measurement or something like that. I
Yeah,
don't
there's
know.
a lot of hypotheticals. Like there's quite a few of them.
Well, the whole
It just
thing is
depends on like
hypothetical,
what. Yeah,
basically.
it depends on what part of it you're talking
Widgets.
about.
There it is. I was not. I liked it. I like micro was my favorite. Micro was a good class, but macro just like it was too much. It
Mm.
was too much that I couldn't grasp at the time. So, but yeah, that's right. Widgets, the best made up product. Yeah, yeah. And then like once you start getting into like operation management and things like that of how the supply chain works, it gets even deeper than that because now you're breaking it down on
Mm.
how what you're doing on a supply chain level is affecting the economic community as a whole. So, and the fact that this dude here won gold medals for economics, I don't understand why he's not an economics professor.
Because it's too complicated and it's really annoying, and it makes me kind of bust down doors and flip tables. Like right now, I gotta say, like that we're trying to our Federal Reserve is trying to fix the inflation system, right? It's trying
It's
to fix the
crazy.
inflation from whatever.
Right.
One of the ways they're trying to do that is to stop people spending so much money, but they're not saying that so much. The way that they're doing that, when they talk about raising rates, that's all of your credit card rates
Yeah.
going
Oh
up
yeah.
in bits and pieces, which means all of
Yep.
your credit card bills you have to pay more on, which means
Yep.
you won't spend as much on your credit cards
Right.
because the rates are higher. That's how like in depth this is, and it's really irritating for people trying to build credit
Yep.
because it's basically murdering you.
Yeah.
Every time they raise a rate, you think you're getting somewhere and you're not. So if you're trying to build credit right now, you are going to have a heck of a time. That's just one part of it. There's like so many other. That's like the most immediate thing about it. Everything else is just.
Well, this was an enlightening episode of this Uncanny Earth. Apologies for not really getting into the meat and potatoes of creating in reality and all that jazz. It's just been kind of a week for me. I have the whole presentation to do tomorrow and another spot, so I'll be doing that most of the day. But next week we're going to be talking about AI, and I think everything that's been going on is going to be a really fascinating conversation, like with Chat GPT and all like the AI
Replica.
friendships you can have. What
Replica.
replica AI? Yeah, I
Yep.
mean
Let's talk about the replicas.
we could talk about the replicas. It's NSFW though, so
Well,
please
only if you
cover.
get into that part of it.
Right, right. And we'll talk about my we'll talk about
The
my
one that
fans.
went racist within like 10 minutes.
Um,
Like an
I
absolute Nazi, like wanted to just murder people.
I
Who boy.
I actually like I forget it's a Google AI program, and I typed in a love story between the Hamburglar and Grimace, and boy was that hilarious! It was hilarious. So
Oof.
yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't like you know for adults. It was a love story between Hamburglar and Grimace.
I'm gonna let you have that. You just go
I don't know
ahead
why it was funny. I was
and
like,
just
oh, what
have that
happened?
over there. Go ahead.
Okay. We will definitely keep that in mind, James, for our next episode, for sure, no doubt. We thank you for joining, and I appreciate you being here. We appreciate Lee, James, Cerebees, Zach, all of you guys for tuning in tonight. Um, This guy, he is he's just dad jokes, right? And he bangs them out like pow pow pow. So, but yes, we'll also be getting to Ghost in the Machine, which is a whole idea and concept. So then the week after that, we're going to be talking about some very interesting stuff regarding wormholes, the paranormal, and so much more. So keep it locked, keep it tuned in. And as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Peace.